This course is about how to create visual narratives in Adobe Photoshop. If you are a non-graphics professional like me, Photoshop is one of those Adobe programs that may seem quite intimidating at first. It is true that Photoshop is a professional-grade tool, and as such, complexity and depth should be expected. Nevertheless, if you have the opportunity to use this iconic powerhouse, you definitely should. As an academic, I frequently need to make visuals for a course, an illustration for a publication, or perhaps a research poster for a conference. While there are several options in Creative Cloud to accomplish these tasks, none are quite as powerful and capable as Photoshop. I designed this course to teach you a few practical workflows in Photoshop that are sure to help you out with these commonly encountered tasks. These workflows are woven together in a 10-step process where we will create a composite image, such as this one. Asset management and image export workflows bookend the course. At the same time, the central focus is non-destructive image editing using adjustment layers and layer masks. These are workflows that help create multi-layer composites and compelling visual narratives. To aid you as you work through the course, I have created 3 standalone help documents: a simple step-by-step checklist, an annotated guide, and a comprehensive Spark page with visual aids. I recommend that you use these resources in conjunction with this video and pause between each step to review the work that you have done. After completing this course, you will have a basic understanding of working with layers non-destructively in Photoshop. For step 1, begin by downloading the 3 project files that came with the course and save them to a convenient location on your computer. Now, let's go ahead and open Photoshop and get started. From the initial Photoshop start screen, you have the option to view several small tutorials on how to use various aspects of the program and its interface. After completing this course, I recommend that you take some time to explore the built-in tutorials to learn even more about this fantastic application. Click Open to open an existing document, or select Open from the Photoshop menu. Navigate to where you saved the document named scene.jpg and open it. Select Save As from the Photoshop File menu and give the new project a name, for example, Photoshop Project. Make sure you place it in the location alongside the other documents, and change the file format to Photoshop. Now click Save. To minimize the risk of losing work in a computer or application crash, it is a good practice to save changes to your project document after each step in the workflow. In step 2, we will configure the Photoshop Workspace. The workspace refers to specific layouts of the Photoshop interface that are optimized for typical workflows. In this tutorial, we'll be using the default Essentials workspace. To ensure that we have the correct workspace selected, click Window on the Photoshop menu and choose Workspace. Select Essentials if it is not already selected, and you can also tick off Lock Workspace to prevent the workspace from being modified accidentally. The Photoshop interface is determined by the chosen workspace configuration and consists of several panels, a toolbar, and other elements. You'll find the document window in the center of the screen. It shows you the document that you're working on, and it updates in real time as you make modifications and edits. On the left side of the screen, you will see the Photoshop toolbar. In this tutorial, we will use several of these tools. The tools are organized into groups, and if you hover your mouse over a button, you will see a tooltip with additional information about the tool. If you click and hold down the mouse button, you will see a flyout menu with additional tools in the same group, so you can change the active tool if you need to. Situated along the top of the Photoshop interface is the Options bar. This is a contextual menu that changes based on the tool that you have selected. Just below the Options bar sits the Document tabs. New documents are loaded into tabs so you can quickly switch between them without having to swap windows. The default workspace configuration sets up the panels on the right side of the screen. From top to bottom, they are the Color panel, the Properties panel, and the Layers panel. The Layers panel is the central feature in Photoshop. Everything we'll be doing revolves around the use of layers to accomplish our work. Below the Layers panel is an essential set of functions that we'll use extensively in this course. Because the icons themselves are tiny and placed right at the screen's bottom edge, they can be hard to see at first. Just make a note of where they are at this point so you can find them when you need them later. In step 3, we will work on straightening and cropping the source image. Click the Crop tool in the Tools bar. And since we're working with non-destructive editing, ensure that the Delete Cropped Pixel option is unchecked. Click the Straightening option in the toolbar. With Straighten selected, find a line in the image that should be horizontal and drag along the line to create the straightening path. When you are satisfied that your image has been straightened, click the Commit button in the Options toolbar to save your changes. Select the Crop tool again to bring up the crop frame. Hold down the Shift key to preserve the image aspect ratio and click and drag from either corner of the crop frame to crop the image to your liking. When you are satisfied with your crop, click the Commit Current Crop option checkmark in the Options menu. Press Command S on a Mac or Control S on a PC to save your changes. In step 4, we will look at color editing with adjustment layers. Non-destructive editing allows us to edit an image in Photoshop without actually altering the source image itself. This is accomplished by using adjustment layers on top of the source layer. The photo we are working with is underexposed, so the first thing we're going to do is adjust the white balance and the exposure using adjustment layers. Select Image Layer 0 and double-click where it says Layer 0. Give the layer a descriptive name, for example, Scene. Select the Scene layer by clicking on it. Then click the Create New Fill or Adjustment Layer button, number 4 from the right at the bottom of the Layers panel, and choose Exposure. Adjust the white balance in the image by choosing the third eyedropper tool from the Properties panel directly above the Layers panel, and click in an image area that you would like to be white. Move the exposure slider in the Properties panel to the right to increase the exposure until the desired effect has been achieved. View the before and after effects by toggling the eye button associated with the new adjustment layer in the Layers panel. By default, an adjustment layer affects every layer below it in the stack. In a simple project with just one source layer and a couple of adjustment layers, that is what we want. However, in a more complex project where you work with composites consisting of multiple source layers, you need to decide which source layer an adjustment layer modifies. Thankfully, Photoshop provides for this through a function called clipping mask. We will work with more than just one source layer in this project, so we have to tie the adjustment layer we just made to the scene source layer. Control-click on a Mac or right-click on a PC on the exposure adjustment layer and select Create Clipping Mask from the pop-up menu to tie it to the first source layer below. Next, we will work on vibrance and saturation to make the colors in the image stand out more. Select the scene layer by clicking on it, and then click the Create New Fill or Adjustment Layer button, number 4 from the right at the bottom of the Layers panel, and choose Vibrance. Move the vibrance and saturation sliders in the Properties panel to the right to achieve the desired effect. If not already enabled, Control-click on a Mac or right-click on a PC on the Vibrance adjustment layer and create Select Clipping Mask from the pop-up menu to tie it to the first source layer below. Press Command-S on a Mac or Control-S on a PC to save your changes. The last set of modifications we will make to the main scene in this workflow is to clean up any unwanted or distracting details in the image. For this, we're going to use the Spot Healing Brush tool. Select the image layer from the Layers panel. Click and hold the Healing Brush tool in the Photoshop toolbar and select the Spot Healing Brush tool. Click on the brush options, third from the left in the top options bar, and set the brush diameter appropriately, for example 63 pixels. Zoom in on the image to see details better. Command plus on a Mac and Control plus on a PC. Paint over the details you wish to remove from the image, and repeat this step as many times as needed. Press Command-S on a Mac or Control-S on a PC to save your changes. Step 6 teaches you about the compositing workflow. This is the second workflow that we'll be covering in this tutorial, and it focuses on compositing using layer masks. This is a compelling feature of Photoshop that is used extensively. The main scene that we are working with, we can see the sky is white and kind of dull. To fix that, we will replace it with a new sky that serves as the background in our project. Since we are working only with non-destructive editing techniques, the source photo will not be altered by applying a new sky. We begin by opening our next source file, which contains a lovely blue sky with some clouds. Choose Open from the Photoshop File menu and navigate to where you saved the project files. Now open the document named sky.jpg. The image sky.jpg opens in a new tab. Press Command A on a Mac or Control A on a PC to select all of it. Then press Command C on a Mac or Control C on a PC to copy it. Switch back to the first tab and paste the image into the project that we're working on by pressing Command V on a Mac or Control V on a PC. Select the new source layer and double-click on the layer name. Give the layer a descriptive name, for example, Sky. Photoshop automatically creates a new layer above the currently selected layer. Since the sky is the background in our scene, it needs to sit behind or below the other layers. To move the layer Sky to the bottom of the stack, click on it and drag it to the bottom. We are now ready to create a layer mask on the scene layer to hide the sky and let the new sky below shine through. There are a couple of different ways to achieve this. In this tutorial, we will demonstrate how to do it using Quick Selection tool and the Brush tool. Let's start with the Quick Selection tool. Make sure the scene layer is selected and choose the Quick Selection tool from the Photoshop Tools menu and drag across a portion of the sky in the scene source image to select it. With the selection active, go to the row of layer functions at the bottom of the Layers panel and click the button Add Layer Mask. This is number 5 from the right. Take a close look at the new Layer Mask thumbnail next to the Scene Layer thumbnail. As you can see, it has a white area on top and a black area below. Layer masks in Photoshop work of a simple principle that black conceals and white reveals. This means that what is masked by black in the scene layer will be hidden from view, allowing the layer below to show through, and what is marked by white will show normally. Looking back at our image now, we can see that the mask does its job, but it needs to be inverted to achieve the intended effect. Click on the Layer Mask thumbnail to select it and press Command I on a Mac and Control I on a PC to invert the layer mask. You can also use the Brush tool to create or modify the mask. All you have to remember is that areas painted black will be concealed and areas painted white will be revealed. Let me demonstrate how it works by editing the mask we have already created for the scene layer. Click on the mask thumbnail in the scene layer to select it. Click on the foreground background color picker in the Photoshop toolbar and set the foreground color to black and the background color to white. or simply press D on the keyboard to set the foreground color to white and the background color to black. Press X to swap the color so the foreground is black. Click and hold the brush tool, pen tool button in the Photoshop Tools bar and make sure the brush tool is selected. Click on the brush tool preset picker in the Photoshop options bar and set the size and hardness to the desired values. Find an element in the image that you want to hide and add it to the mask by painting over it with black. If you accidentally painted over something by mistake, press X on the keyboard to swap the foreground color and background colors and paint over it again with white to bring it back into view. When you're happy with the mask's appearance, use the Photoshop Move tool to situate the sky how you want it. You can also apply adjustment layers to the sky if you want to bring out the colors in the sky even further. Follow the instructions in step 4 to add vibrance to it. We have now completed the background and middle ground of our image. It is time to move on to the foreground. Press Command S on a Mac or Control S on a PC to save your changes. In step 7, you will continue to work with compositing and learn how to isolate a subject from the background. Isolating subjects from the background is a frequently performed task in Photoshop. In this tutorial, we're going to use this technique to add a person to our scene. Let us begin by opening the third and final source document in Photoshop. Choose Open from the Photoshop File menu and navigate to where you saved the project files. Then open the document named subject.jpg. Select the Quick Selection tool from the Photoshop Tools menu and drag across a portion of the background to get the selection started. Hold down the Shift key on the keyboard and select new background areas until only the subject is outlined. With the selection active, click the Add a Mask button at the bottom of the Layers panel, fifth from the right. Press Command-I on a Mac and Control-I on a PC to invert the mask so the subject is selected rather than the background. We will return to this image in step 10 later, so keep the tab open for now. We will move now to the image and its new associated mask into the main project window. To ensure that the subject ends up at the top of the project layer stack, quickly switch to the Photoshop Project window tab and ensure that all layers are deselected by clicking on the Layers panel background. Then switch back to the Subject tab. Click on the Layer 0 thumbnail and drag it to the Photoshop Project tab. Wait until the tab opens and move your cursor to the document window before you release. This will move the image along with its mask intact into your Project tab. With the Photoshop Move tool selected, click and drag the image into place. Adhering to the rule of thirds from photography, we want to create depth in the scene by placing our subject to the side in the image. With the Photoshop Move tool selected, hold down the Shift key on the keyboard and click and drag from a corner of the selection to scale the image up or down. Then reposition it in the scene as needed. Press Command-S on a Mac or Control-S on a PC to save your changes. We are almost done with the project. What remains is to add some informative text to it. For this purpose, we will use the horizontal type tool in Photoshop to create a re-editable type layer. While you could place text directly on the image, I wouldn't recommend doing so in this particular instance. The reason is that the background is saturated with too many colors for us to create enough contrast and clarity to make the text readable. We can create a separate contrast-enhancing background element for the text to sit on to get around this problem. For this, we are going to use the Rectangle tool in the Photoshop toolbar. Click and hold the Shape Tools button in the Photoshop toolbar and choose the Rectangle tool. Place the cursor in a document window and drag down and to the right to draw a simple rectangle. Click on either of the small circles inside the rectangle corners and drag inward to convert to rounded corners if desired. With the rectangle layer selected, the Properties panel lets you edit the appearance of the shape, such as changing the fill color, adding a stroke, and more. In this example, we're not going to make any changes to the appearance here though. Instead, we will adjust the opacity of the layer itself. Select the rectangle layer in the Layers panel and change the opacity to 40%. We now have a more uniformly colored background for our text, making it much easier to read. Press Command-S on a Mac or Control-S on a PC to save your changes. Click on the horizontal Type tool in the Photoshop toolbar and go to the Options menu above to choose Font Face, Font Type, Font Size, and Font Color. You can select the type color already present in the image if you click on the color picker, third from the right in the options bar, and use Photoshop's eyedropper tool to select the color from anywhere in the image. Click somewhere on the background element we just created to make a new re-editable type layer. Photoshop automatically adds filler text to the new type layer, so you can preview your font style and color choices. Since this text layer is re-editable, you can always return later and edit the text or its appearance. With the re-editable type layer selected, click anywhere in the sample text and press Command A on a Mac or Control A on a PC to select the whole text. Then replace it by typing in your own text. Press Command A on a Mac or Control A on a PC to select the text you just entered and change its alignment within the layer if desired. Go to the Options bar and choose an alignment option, fifth from the right. Switch to the Move tool in the Photoshop Tools bar and reposition the text. Photoshop presents you with several alignment guides to help you position your text just right. The last thing we will do for this project is to add a simple stroke to the text to make it stand out more. For this, we're going to add a layer style to the re-editable text layer. With the re-editable type layer selected, click Add a Layer Style from the menu at the bottom of the Layers panel, sixth from the right, and choose Stroke. In the Layer Style Options window that opens, change the width of the stroke and change the color of the stroke, and then click OK to save the changes. Press Command S on a Mac or Control S on a PC to save your changes. The Photoshop document we have created is not suitable for publishing in its current form. So we need to develop exports targeted at specific use cases. Let us begin with exporting a full-size version of the document suitable for print scenarios where you need a lot of resolution. Click on the Photoshop File menu and select Export and Export As. Set Format to JPEG and Quality to 100%. You can leave the other values as they are. Name the image and click Export to export it. Click on the Photoshop File menu again and select Export and Export As. Choose Format JPEG, but this time lower the quality to 80%. Also, change the width to 1024 and note that the height changes automatically to retain the correct aspect ratio. Name this file Photoshop Project Small to avoid overwriting the previous export. If we compare sizes, we will see that the original Photoshop document is 228 megabytes or thereabouts. The high-quality JPEG export is about 12 megabytes, and the lower quality export is only 340 kilobytes. This makes it ideal for most web uses. You can create as many exports as you need, so you always have an appropriately sized file for whatever need might arise. The JPEG format is ideal for most online use cases because it is compact and lightweight and viewable on any device or platform. However, it does have one drawback, and that is it does not preserve transparency. Often we want to use images with transparency, both in digital and print. And for that we have the PNG format. To demonstrate how to export to PNG with transparency intact, let us switch to the image of our student subject that we worked on in step 7. In Photoshop, click on the tab named Subject. From the Photoshop File menu, choose Export and Quick Export as PNG. Name the file and choose a location, then click Save to save it. We have now created a transparent image containing only our student subject. This will come in handy when you need a picture with an isolated subject on a transparent background. Always keep the Photoshop source file denoted by the PSD extension safely stored so you can come back and make edits and new exports in the future. The final task before we close Photoshop is to save the original project document once again. Click on the Photoshop Project tab and then press Command-S on a Mac or Control-S on a PC to save it. This concludes the visual storytelling with non-destructive image editing techniques in Photoshop. You can find many more helpful tutorials on using Photoshop at Adobe's websites or by searching for tips and tricks on Google. I wish you good luck in your Photoshop journey and thank you for watching.